The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome in. It's the Coach Bill Clark Show here on Jocks 94.5 with Coach Bill Clark. I'm Pat Smith, Lance Roberts, Molly Robinson with you for the next half hour. And, Coach, this is Masters Week. You ever been over to Augusta?
Never have. Always wanted to go.
Never gone then?
No, it was usually in the middle of some kind of spring something. Practice recruiting,
right.
you know.
That makes sense.
I had this other job, that I did for a while.
Not to mention the fact your back and neck might be problematic if you wanted to play a lot of golf.
Yeah, I used to play, enjoyed it, and then just as the back got worse, the golf got less.
Let me ask you, is there one particular sport, whether you played it or not, and you being a coach, I mean, you respect the game. You respect the athletes and the coaches that participate. But like when you watch golf or whether it's NASCAR or something like that, does it give you like a whole different perspective as a coach at this individualism that goes on with some of these other sports?
Yeah. I think that was always, let's just use baseball.
Okay.
That, especially being a high school coach where I was the AD and you were sharing athletes. And one of the things, and I won't get off on a coach safely talk, but really this multiplicity, playing as many sports as you can. And I was talking to a dad the other day who said, was talking about coach safely and, man, I wish we had that. Somebody had that for these guys because his son played in the major leagues. And he said every scout, I should say, asked me, first thing they asked me, did he play multiple sports? And, so I think of these other sports that are non-individualistic. But when you start thinking about golf, being out there by yourself, I mean, you got a caddy, which, does give you somebody to at least commiserate with, but you're talking about lonely. You're your own coach, and I know they have their own swing coaches and all that, but that's a lot of mental toughness.
No, you got to, and it's so much between the ears.
Right.
There's a lot of sports that are, but it's not only you against the course. A lot of times it's you against yourself. And I remember reading something that a pro had told on tips and things that had helped his game, and he had a swing coach and a coach that would walk around with him, and they'd follow him around during tournaments, and the coach would tell him, look, even in some of these tournaments in practice rounds, don't ask me. I want to see you fix it on the course yourself, and then we can go back and correct. But the mental side of the game and how it is an individual sport, let's be honest. But, man, it's so much fun to play. And I think for me, because it's a challenge, it doesn't come easy. And just as soon as you think that you've got it nicked, and golf will remind you how pedestrian you really are.
Yeah, and I think that along with obviously the beauty of the courses, and I mean Augusta, that's you hadn't been. I said I've got to do that as much as I love sports and just all sports. I think that's obviously on the soon to be bucket list, soon to fix. I hope.
I was just gonna ask though on bucket list, would there be a venue that you can think of with I don't want to call it snooty. Some people perceive it as snooty with the attitudes that might be portrayed from Augusta National, but they're proud of what they have. Is there a college football venue, program, event that you can think of to maybe draw a comparison?
Wow, that is, I don't know. I mean, the thing I love about those guys, I love people that do it right. People that do the details, and I love tradition. Obviously, you got to keep up with the times, whether we're talking about offensive scheme or whatever, but their tradition is so great and just how they take care of that course and all the little details that make it so special. I don't know, college football, obviously I think of the big venues, Michigan and Notre Dame, but I don't know about similar.
Well, Rose Bowl and their stance on certain things about tradition.
Right.
Rose Bowl would maybe be an example. I don't want to compare Army-Navy in that game because I don't want that to be mistaken for snooty or look. There's so much respect.
You're
that we
more
have
going
for that
back to
tradition.
the way we've always done it, and we're going to keep that tradition.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know. That would probably be maybe Rose Bowl traditions would be. That's a good comparison.
Now, whether it was in high school, Jacksonville State, UAB, whatever the case may be, what was the most prestigious venue to you personally that you ever coached in?
I think when you start thinking of SEC schools, whether we're talking about Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, I think that was just, I played a high school game in Bryant-Denny, which was different. You're talking about, cavernous when you're playing in those, we've done that with Legion Field. I don't know. I think the big thing in those SEC was the crowd. When you think of crowds in those environments, Texas A&M, but it's not real fun when you're on the other side of that. You're talking about a disadvantage, but, I don't think people really realize, it's like we were talking about having those speakers down there at Tennessee, and you start talking about loud, but really not louder than Alamo Dome with them piping the music in. I mean, I think that's the loudest venue I've ever been in.
Well, fans and crowd noise, there are different levels of hostility.
Yeah.
So as far as a hostile fan base crowd,
Yeah.
when you had to take a team in there to play, what would that program
That's a good question.
Then,
For us would probably be, I think Alamo Dome was some of those because you had the piped in music. Yeah, they had, last
But
time
wasn't
we
that
played-
against league policy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they just,
they just let them do it?
oh, yeah, that's when you did. That's the stuff when you say, okay, wait, this is a truly competitive disadvantage. And the music is playing, and we went out to Eastern Washington at Jack State, and they were playing music right up to the snap, but it was different. It was an open air stadium. I mean, we're sitting here. It's like an Alabama-Auburn game, as you're talking about hostile environment. I said Auburn and Alabama's trying to get, but you cannot hear each other talking to each other at the Alamo Dome. Of course, last time we played there, it was sold out.
All right, so let me go. I want to go back to playing in SEC venues. I distinctly remember that night game at Texas A&M.
Yeah,
where you guys came in. There was a lot of people that were saying that you guys could go in there, and if you beat them, that was not going to be that big of an upset because you guys were playing that well before you led into that game. But in that particular venue, because of the enormity, the size of it. Was it difficult for you, especially offensively? Did it present problems with calling in regards to the signals? Like, kind of take us to what you guys did as a coaching staff to get your players ready or kind of react during the game.
That's a great question. One of the things I did, and I'll go back to high school, I still remember taking, because we got into some, I had guys come to practice and said, I've never been in an environment like this, and I played college football. I mean, back in the day when we had it, and it was – they were shutting it down, trying to shut it down at 6 o'clock, and I'm talking to the fire chief going, no, we're not shutting. There's 20,000 people here. We'll get, But I would take a golf cart with speakers on it and put it behind the huddle of the offensive team. This is pre, the sound system. But that was one of the first things I bought at UAB, and we didn't have a ton of money, but I bought the sound system where I could pipe the music in, I could control the noise, and I wore a headset all the time in practice.
You had the little Britney Spears, Madonna type.
I wouldn't have thought about it
low
that way,
profile,
but yes, right?
But
You know where
they
his
were the
mind
ones that
is.
kind of came on the
Right.
scene, and then you had coaches and college football broadcasters. They kind of started learning to use that technology.
So the noise component was so big. The Tennessees, but when we played, anybody we played that was really going to put some noise into the game, we used that. I just didn't want it to be new from a communication standpoint, but also I loved the way I could control practice with that headset, even though there was a clock, because the clock got paused a lot of times based on what was happening. I didn't like the period ended, and I was trying to explain to this guy. It's one of the teams I consulted with, and they did if y'all have ever seen period 1, it's 5 minutes, period 2, but the players are sitting over there looking. It's period 22, and you're at we got 24 periods. How many periods today? So I would go, this period might be 8 minutes. This period might be 17. This period, there's 8 periods. I mean, that was a mental thing for me, and I'm explaining to these guys, well, that's the craziest thing. Well, don't do it.
Yeah.
I just know what works for us. And my players, I never saw them over there counting periods because they didn't really know. But how you practice. Now, that's a talk to me in of itself. How you practice was everything. I wanted you guys to come to see practice and go, man, that's the most organized practice I've ever seen.
Okay, so I want to go back to that practicing for those SEC venues in the noise.
Yeah.
Like, so what did you do during the week? And then once you got in the venue, what did you guys have to it was a fluid situation. What did you have to do to adjust your game plan?
So having worked it was the noise we could create out of our sound system. And you could put crowd noise.
Right.
It's a band with the sound of a crowd. So it's silent counts. It's the guard looking back and pointing and all the things you see, but that's got to be worked on. We're just saying, hey, we want no pre-snap penalties. We want 0 penalties that were caused. And I tell you, y'all have noticed this, and one of my pet peeves when we played Georgia was the stimming they were doing. And I used to say, guys, I'm a defensive coach. I've been a defensive coach for a long time. I mean, I can go way back. and I go back with a dad who was a coach, you cannot, and we'd all love to do it. We'd love to simulate the snap count and move right before the ball is snapped. So what Georgia, especially at home, and they were so good at it, it's all connected. They hop together. So we're playing them. And I mean, I took a lot of pride in us being disciplined, us, not getting those. Now, we would get some personal fouls because we're physical and some of those things, but stupid pre-snap penalties. We played that game. We had seven penalties where we jumped off sides. 4 of them were 3rd and 3 or less. But they were smart, especially if you had any motion built into your call, because they're looking at the clock. 9, 8, 7. Here comes a guy in motion. Right before that, move. So I watch Arkansas the next week, and I watch Sam Pittman throw his headset. They were down 35-0 at half to that team as well. And he's like, they're calling the snap count. So by the end of the game, they're laughing at us, I'm saying, the players are coming there saying, Coach, they're just saying our snap count. So you're talking about things that are disadvantaged. That's what I always say, can you get even a fair called game? That's the stuff people don't even understand. When you're talking to a coach saying, where is excuses and where is reality of these SEC guys knowing who pays their salary? And that could happen in the Sun Belt or anywhere, but things like that you were like, wait a second. You've got this crowd, these players, and you're going to let them call the snap count right before and make us jump. They don't need any advantages.
Going back to crowd noise, I don't know why more college basketball fan bases. I guess you would have to have a really disciplined student body and the rest of your crowd. But to me, making all of that noise, that just gets drowned out by the players and they're used to it. But you get a guy from the opposing team going to the free throw line. Yeah. Let everybody in unison be screaming, and then everyone stop at one moment where you can hear a pin drop in that arena.
Right.
That guy wouldn't be able to hit the backboard.
Well, those are the things. What do you use to your advantage? And I think that's good coaching. Like I said, go to Georgia, and Georgia might have been the worst as far as a locker room. I told you your training is under the bleachers. You're taping people. You got a piece of plastic up. Go to Florida and it's a cracker box.
Did you go to LSU?
Yes. Yeah, I mean that's what you do. I mean it's smart.
That's pretty tough, right there.
I mean, give them credit. That's what you do, and that doesn't win or lose, but anything you can do to help your environment. As we talked about at Protective, when I built I made them too nice for the visitors.
You really did.
You really did.
Because they would go, I'm telling you, what would happen? They would go to Legion Field. We would play those guys, and they would go over there, and they would look, and there'd be nobody on their side. You're at this cavernous stadium. Yep. The dressing facility was terrible. And they would play down. I mean, it helped us. There was not.
That way, locker room and Protected. You could host corporate events.
I know it was. I quickly was like, "What have I done here? I've messed up. We've made it way too nice."
Well, one thing you don't have to worry about messing up, and that's the great folks at Smart Bank and what they do each and every day.
Yeah, I was at a really good meeting with the Smart Bank advisors yesterday, and once again, the consistency of knowing the folks that come in there, they're making a huge push for just everyday banking, and I think the bank's really doing well. We're getting more and more venues in Alabama, but I think that just that down home, small town banking filled with all the amenities of a big bank.
Coach, one thing that we've never really talked about on the show, because we've talked a lot of X's and O's with you, but I want to talk a little special teams with you. I know Landrum used to be a long snapper. I've had some good friends that punted and kicked at the college level. As a head coach, what was your philosophy, and how did you deal with sometimes some interesting characters when it came to special teams?
Yeah, great question. I think there was this time, and I'm going to say 2000s, early 2000s, there was really, people would think, the college guys had a kicking specialist. They really didn't. They would a lot of times, they go get a great kicker, but there was nobody really in charge of him that understood kicking. What would happen, we started getting folks that said, okay, I was a punter or I was a kicker. So wherever I went, you were looking for that guy. Is there a guy in the school, like I had Rocky Riddle, who was a great kicker at Jacksonville State, just happened to be running park and rec at Prattville. Hey, I need you. I need you to work with the kickers. We're going into the 06 season at Prattville, and I know we got a chance to be great, and I don't have a punter. So I called some guys at Alabama, and so I said, hey, who is training your specialist? Hey, we got a guy. He's an interesting character, and he's a coach. End up doing a special teams guy. I ended up hiring this guy. So I ended up having a guy who actually understood the kickers. He had a national kicking camp. Ended up helping us a lot, where we had somebody that knew. So from then on, I wanted somebody that had kicked, working with the kickers. And, of course, we did PAT field goal to start practice every day along with 2-point plays and all these other things. I just never could stand the thought of I'm going to lose a game and I'm hoping that the kicker hits it. And I've never put him in those situations.
What did you learn about kickers as you were watching them work with some of these specialists? Because to me, and it doesn't matter, you get bigger guys that maybe played at the high school level, linebacker, but then you get guys that soaking wet might weigh 140 pounds. You're looking at him there on the sideline and going, how does the guy make the ball come off his foot the way that he does to travel end over end 60 yards through the air?
Well, we would always have camps. We would always have camps to find these kickers, and I wanted to be the place where these kickers were coming to, and that's why we started becoming the experts. Wanted a guy that had worked with, I had Heath Thomas who had actually punted at Alabama, but a guy that actually had kicked. The thing I always wanted with my kickers that I always thought, one, we were going to work it in practice, not just, maybe at the end of practice we're going to try and kick a field goal and then we're going to hope this guy's going to hit it. I want to be standing there, as Gene Stallings said, I hate to tell you, I am going to be at the game, so if that causes a little pressure for you. But I think the big thing for me with all the kickers, the punters, all the specialists was I wanted them to do the training that everybody else did. Now, of course, I always told, Lyle Henley, I said, Lyle, do not hurt our kicker trying to squat 500 pounds.
Right.
But they needed to train with everybody else where they felt like they were part of the team. And we always had our kickers. That way, if something ever, it's like I always told them, I'm going to do you this big favor. I'm going to make you do everything else everybody else does. You're not going to be sitting there eating Cheetos. Even though you could still be probably a pretty decent kicker, they were going to do the running, they were going to do the training, and then I felt like they had a toughness too. And we always had, great success.
I used to think about that too, because it would be high school, and back when we had 2-a-days, and you'd be in the middle of August, and you'd be going through drills, and you're looking over, and we had 2 guys on our roster that's all they did.
Yep.
It was they kicked, and yeah, there was a little bit of resentment there.
Yeah.
It's like what is he doing right now? Like right now, where his helmet's in his hand and he's waving at butterflies. Mm-hmm. I know that's not the case with all kickers. Were there ever a part though in practice? I know you said that you made them train the same way. They're running with the team. Was there ever a time you looked over there and went, "What are y'all doing?"
Oh yeah, of course. But I, like pursuit drill, they were the runners.
Okay.
Things like that where I could make them do things that made them part of the team. And the fact that, I put a lot of pressure on him and I coached him like I coached everybody else. Now, maybe in the game, he missed. I tried to treat him kind of like I'd treat the quarterback, but sometimes I felt like he needed getting on. But a lot of it was I wanted those other guys to see him coached, make him tough in practice to make the games easy, but also make his teammates see him as a player.
How did you practice the icing of the kicker?
Yeah, we used air horns. I'd blow a whistle right before they kick. I mean, anything we could do, run them off the sideline. Every day we did how many seconds does it take the whole group? I might not run them to the sideline. All right, you're off, come back on. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, we got to win. This is to win. And we did that every day from different distances. I always wanted to put the ball on the right hash on about the 3-yard, every day. 1 PAT, 1 ball on the right hash at the 3. That angle. Of course, we move the ball. We're going to catch it behind the guard. Those are the things that when you say we won, it wasn't an accident. We hit that kick because we worked on it. We did this because – and that's what I was always trying to do. What are the situations that I have not covered? And we had the day before the game where we did it and, the free kick.
My question is, okay, so whatever circumstance it was, late game, important kick, they call timeout to ice.
Yeah.
And let's just say he ventures over there towards the sideline. Do you say anything to him, or is that his special teams coach's responsibility? Is it kind of like the unspoken word during a no-hitter? You just don't say nothing, you just let it go?
That's a good question.
How did you handle it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would just be a nod from me and him. He knows we've been there so many times in practice. Now, it wasn't that, but we had been there so many times in practice. I'd put so much pressure on him. The ball had been wet. Everything I could think to do to make games hard, just like I did for everybody else. Every situation, every third and short, it's just like the game. I mean, that was a year we weren't playing when Michigan and Michigan State, when Michigan State blocks the punt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I really do. I think Jim Harbaugh is a great coach.
The birth of Surrender Cobra.
Surrender Cobra.
I am watching now. This is no joke. I am watching this, and I am screaming at the TV. He's not speaking to them. I mean, we would always do 11 guys up for the game. Snapper, whatever you do, keep your butt down. I mean, I was always talking about the snapper. I'd rather it hit the ground than go over his head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But 11 guys up. All you got to do is catch it and get it off. Catch it and get it. They don't say anything to him. Now, this is not like you're talking to the PAT field goal kicker who's about to kick, and you don't want to ice him.
Yeah.
This is protection. They had gunners. If you remember, they had 2 gunners sitting out there, and there's 11 up. Instead of going into a tight punt formation where you just say, look, do not leave till the ball's kicked. They don't even have anybody back. Things like that are the stuff that would keep me up at night.
Was there ever a situation in the game, maybe it was because of inclement weather, whatever, where you had the conversation with the kicker, hey, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a conversation me and the special team coach and him would have, constantly, where are we with the wind, where are we not? I'm getting that on the headset. Just reminders, we feel good at 45 because the wind's blowing in our face. We feel good at 55. Constant.
So at coin toss, did it matter more to you because of the way the quarterback would be able to throw with the wind or against the wind, or because of your field goal kicker at the end of the game, hopefully kicking with the wind at his back?
Just the scenarios were always different. That's a great question because I love to defer. I just love the idea of trying to get it the second half and maybe stealing one before half. That middle 8 that's talked about now that used to never be. But the wind was a big factor. If I could have the wind, they choose the ball. I get the wind to start them bad. I always talked about this was no Art Briles thing. Start fast, start fast, start. Because what start fast does they start questioning. So start fast in the third quarter, and then finish. I mean, that was big talk all the time. That we took a break after the PAT field goal time. We'd have a pre-practice and we'd take a break. That was to start the game. I wanted them to know just what it was like. We took a break, right, that I would call halftime, even though it was really toward the end of the game. But I wanted them to have to sit, get some fruit in them. That was halftime. Because how many times you see somebody come out lethargic after halftime?
Yeah.
Or start slow? Those things.
How many conversations did you ever have with your staff or yourself going, maybe I ought to go take a trip to Australia to check out one of these kicking academies and recruit a little
I had
bit?
an Australian punter. Coach Crow had got him. Hamish McInnes.
Imagine that.
Imagine Coach
We
Crow.
want in-home
Of course, he had a
visit, though,
female.
Coach. I want to go
Molly.
to
He had a
Australia and meet
first
the family.
female kicker, our first female player.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Jack State, Mama Mana.
And then Vanderbilt did it a few years later.
Yeah, it was too late then.
Well,
Jack State already done it.
Hewitt Trustful, we had the first high school female kicker.
Okay.
Yeah, she had a
Really?
couple. Yep, she hit some extra points for us a couple years ago. All of our kickers got injured, and she was on the soccer team, and Coach Floyd brought her out, and she finished up the season for us.
There you go.
Sure did. Nothing like kickers, punters, and special teams. Good folks.
Coach, could you hit a field goal, soccer style?
A very short one, yes.
20, 25?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just I'm a lot looser than I used to be now with all my stretching. So yeah, I probably could.
Well, there's going to be a point in the show that I'm told that we're going to go off location and we're going to try some of these things.
Sure. You snap it back.
I'll snap it back.
Pass the hold.
Paddle
Okay.
hold.
There we go.
And Molly will stand behind you and scream. To
Yes.
see if it rattles you.
Yes.
This will be like a morning of college game day.
And then whoever doesn't do it right, do we go back to that smell?
Oh, the sticky fish.
Yeah, the sticky
The
fish.
sticky fish.
Leonard
The
didn't
Surströmming.
handle that very well.
No.
No, he
We
didn't.
were doing the play-by-play, and he
No, he did not handle
struggled.
that well.
They could hear me barking at Elmwood.
yeah.
That was good. Donahue Chevrolet, fine sponsor of this program.
They are. I've got to clean my Tahoe up.
Oh, boy.
Did get a good rain the other day to get some of that pollen off. But seriously, the guys at Donahue, great job. Obviously, Chevrolet got constant deals going on, for college students and vets. And go check our guys out at Donahue. They do a great job.
Coach, you are now the president, CEO What else? What other titles you got at Coach Safely?
I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah, I'll just stick with that.
Do you prefer president? Is that on your business card or
Mr.
CEO?
President.
I haven't yet, but I'm working on that.
Okay, Mr. President.
Yeah, or El Presidente.
We
El
need you to wear more
Presidente.
ties.
How about that?
Just
More
a bit.
neckties.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
Yes,
he's got a necktie on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
What
you
about
go.
you?
Coach Crow asked me, we were going to Montgomery to talk about our bill, and Coach Crow said, "No, you're wearing a tie. I'm wearing a tie." He was asking, "Are you?" I said, "No, I'm not wearing a tie.
No.
This is Coach Safely. I don't wear ties a lot anymore. I will some, but
What was your attire in high school on the sideline?
coaching shirt.
Coaching shirt?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to look like the other coaches.
Tank top.
Yeah. So no sweatshirt when it got
Tank
cold.
top, boots and shorts, and spot belts.
Were you shocked at how much Kalen DeBoer's attire, how that was a topic of conversation?
Yeah, I was shocked a little bit, and that's something you still need to be aware of as the coach.
Yeah, there's some coaches that I believe it that they care nothing. They don't care what anybody thinks about what they wear.
That's right.
Matt Patricia would be an example.
Yeah.
Belichick would be an example.
Yeah,
You were always conscious though of making sure you kind of want to look good, right?
I mean decent.
Yeah.
It was always interesting because, Coach Saban, the only time Coach Saban, now at practice he would wear his floppy hat.
Yeah.
But the only time at Alabama that he ever wore anything on his head was if it was raining, they would bring him out a baseball cap.
Right.
So there's only a few times. I remember a game at Missouri, it was coming, just a downpour. And seeing him wear a baseball cap was just weird.
Yeah, it was different.
It was just odd.
Yeah, there's just some people that's just not their thing, and there's some that are, and I think it's just got to fit you. I like to be like the other coaches. I didn't. And there's people out there that were going to wear something different, and some of that they did as I think respect. Like you were talking about the tie.
Yeah, I mean, Gene Stallings, when he was named head coach at Alabama, he always wore a tie. Pat Dye always wore a tie.
I think
at
that's
Auburn.
just maybe respect to the game or whatever.
Terry Bowden wore a tie.
Yeah.
His
To me,
whole
that
time.
would be the most one. It would be uncomfortable. I'm coaching. I'm running up and down the. And I'm not saying they weren't, but I was, but I wanted to be part of the staff. I wanted the staff to feel like I was part of them, and you know who the head coach is, but I wanted them to feel like I was one of them.
All right, so back to Coach Safely. Tell us what's going on now. I know you're spending a lot of time in Montgomery. Nationally speaking about Coach Safely, it's a very important facet of what you do every day.
Yeah, so what's going on now with Coach Safely? We're really taking another phase. Obviously, Trustful. We talk about Trustful being one of our very first folks that really had everybody taking the class and the test, and that's what we want. We want it to get across the whole state, and it's really becoming part of the law. Is it's like I always say, it's all the right things to do, so they will play for the safety, for all those things. But it is the law, and we need to get everybody in our state trained. It really is. We're getting Texas and North Carolina and in Louisiana and Georgia. Arkansas made it a law. This thing is going to be national. I love the idea of Alabama leading the way on safety.
Speaking of train, and I love dogs, there is a great group right here in the state of Alabama doing wonderful work, and it's Canine Global Protection, and what they offer is just amazing, and kind of learning about their process and how they train those beautiful dogs.
Yeah, and you're talking about important. Those guys are, major league games, airports, NFL games, but they're here. They're at our colleges, and they can smell guns, they can smell bombs, and they're doing it. They're veteran-owned, and they have veterans. Plus, just cool with these animals and how neat they are. So we appreciate them sponsoring us.
Do you have a favorite this weekend at the Masters? Who do you got?
Gosh.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
You did put me on the spot because I don't have a favorite. I mean, obviously, I like our guy. What's our guy that got arrested last year?
Scheffler.
Scotty Scheffler. I should know that name, but
Yeah,
yeah.
Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he's even playing right now. I just like him.
No, he's good.
I mean, he's a good player, and I like him as a human being.
You can't go wrong with Scheffler.
Yeah, who you got?
I like Xander Schauffele. I like Xander winning it.
I like Scheffler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Hey,
Molly's going Rory, Michael Roy.
Scheffler's got ice water in his veins.
Yeah.
She likes the Irishman.
You could send
McElroy.
him out there for a kick
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
wind.
That's right.
He put it through the uprights.
Well, those are the guys, and I always compare kickers, and it's a good way to finish, but I compared our kickers to golfers, just from a technique. And the best kickers I had were those guys that were just that flat affect, just
Nothing affected them.
Nothing affected them. And those were the guys you'd have a year and they'd go 14 or 15. I had one kicker kick for me at UAB. He was really good, talented, and he cared. I always told him, I said, you care a little bit too much. And he had some clutch kicks for us. One of our most talented guys, and he really cared. And then I had some of those guys that seemingly didn't. They were just that calm, and that's kind of the position to be calm in, kind of like a golfer.
Yep. We'd like to thank Buffalo Rock, Dr. Pepper, Coach, title sponsor here of this program.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper, believed in us just like Jimmy Lee and Buffalo Rock did from the get-go. I tell you what, with Buffalo Rock, you don't realize just how big they are. They've got locations here, Huntsville, down on the coast. They service a lot of folks, but Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock, appreciate both of them.
That's another edition of the Bill Clark Show. Hope you'll join us each and every Thursday right here on this program. For Landrum Molly, Coach Bill Clark, I'm Pat Smith. Also Jack Crow. I don't know why I almost said Coach Jack Crow. I don't know what came over me there.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
great
I apologize. Have a great week.
This has been the Bill Clark Show.